Welcome to the Beyond the Event podcast, your home for exclusive tips, trends, and stories from local event professionals. So get ready and let's go beyond the event.
Welcome into the Beyond the Event podcast. I'm here with a special guest with Burnside Events. We have Cory Albaugh, the owner and magic behind, I guess you could say, the mixer and the lights and the DJ entertainment experience for all types of events. And excited to share his expertise in the industry. And the first place I like to start is honestly just the backstory. So Cory, why don't you just give a quick little introduction to who you are, what you do, and how you kind of got started in the game of the event space.
I appreciate that, Jet. I really appreciate you having me here today. Hopefully we can have a good conversation and shed a little bit more insight, at least from the DJ realm of things, on the event side of the industry. So I only started Burnside Events 2 years ago, but I have been in the industry for 2 years, or 12 years, sorry. I was with another production company for 10 of those years and ran it for 5. And then I decided that I wanted something different that I wasn't exactly getting with that other company. And so that was kind of the birth of Burnside Events. I wasn't expecting it to take off the way it did, but I guess through the 10 years that I had with the previous company, all those relationships and connections that I've made really allowed us to kind of like jump significantly as far as growth goes. And we're at a point now that I just never expected to be at. And so having these conversations like you and I are having, that's kind of the biggest part about the coolest thing actually about our industry is the networking aspect of it. And so it's really helped me grow to where I am now. With that other company, we did all types of events between DJing weddings. We did a lot of corporate stuff. We did installations for audio and video, and then we did a lot of game show stuff as well. And so when I transitioned, the bread and the butter of what I focus on was mainly weddings. And so I wanted to transform completely into just solely focusing on the wedding industry. That's what I know best. That's what I do best. And so I wanted to be able to capitalize in that area, I guess, to the max. So that's how I kind of started things. And I wanted to be a little bit different. Everybody now, and this goes for any of the different areas of the industry, everybody and their sister thinks that they can be a DJ now with the capabilities of AI, Spotify and everything. Anybody can go in and play music. And so how we differentiate ourselves is the ability to mix and blend the music live the way that we do, put a good club spin on things if people want high energy for their dance floors. And then the other thing is really incorporating a look that is completely different, making sure that the way that our equipment is presented is top notch and next level. And so a lot of our guys, including myself, we use a booth that encapsulates our DJ, our actual DJ board. And so it's a piece of furniture essentially. And the look of it is really modern and sleek, classy and elegant looking. So we could show up to any location, like a really high-end ballroom in DC or something, and actually fit in that ballroom and not have cables running everywhere with a bunch of bulky equipment. We actually look like we know what we're doing as well as obviously knowing what we're doing. And then lighting. Lighting really enhances a party. And so a lot of DJs now, they're able to just go out and play the music, and 9 times out of 10 they'll do a great job as long as people are dancing. But we always want to go that extra mile. And so everything that we do, any package that we have, includes some kind of lighting element to it, whether that's just 4 uplights and the lights that you actually see in my virtual background here. They really help create that party atmosphere that people are looking for to help people dance, because I can play the great music all day long, and sometimes people they're just not dancers. And so being able to dim those lights in a venue and make people feel comfortable and like they're at a party scene, then it allows them to loosen up a little bit more outside of liquid courage as well.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the last podcast episode we shot, we had Heidi Hiller on from Innovative Party Planners, and she brought something up that I thought was interesting. I never looked. We've been in the event space for 15 years, which is a much different angle. With we create the scene in terms of the tent, the tables, the chairs, and the setting, but then you come in and create the actual fun and memorable moments. We're kind of like the platform for that. And one thing Heidi shared was, an event is like a play, and you have a lot of moving parts going on, and lighting was one of the big aspects that she brought up with that. So it's kind of interesting to hear two different sides of. That's why I love this podcast, is like it gives you different angles of what an event really looks like. But at the same time, we could argue and say the same thing, that the way we lay out an event, making sure, like, one thing we focus on that you might not have to focus on is like the flow pattern throughout the tent. We want to make sure that there's enough space and we're not crammed or whatever. And that's interesting to hear your twist on it of you're making it like a play. You're really the energy behind an event. One thing special about this podcast is there's going to be a lot for potential clients, and then also for other vendors to learn stuff as well. And I'm curious to know later on is how you connect with these vendors, especially you said 2 years on your own. But the first question I want to dive into right at following up off of your story is with being, you said 2 years, right?
Yeah.
On your own. Yeah. So, and you said you didn't expect it to take off that way. When it comes to acquiring your clients and getting clients or whatever, what do you think has contributed to, I guess you could say, the momentum to really just get booking after booking after booking?
So you touched on the vendor relations, and you and I had a conversation before we even started this, that the networking aspect of this industry it's unmatchable. So when a lot of my clients that I receive are from venues, are from photographers, are from coordinators. And so that bride and groom has already entrusted that company to handle whatever part of the wedding that they're handling. And so obviously they're going to really consider whatever recommendations that they have for other vendors, for them to hire. And so that was the biggest success on how we've gotten to where we are, is by making sure that we've connected and held up the reputation that I have had over the entire 12 years here. I guess that was the biggest reason for our success. Now, we did 81 events in our first year, and I'm hoping to go over 100 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So just in
Wow.
that first year alone, the other thing to our success, I credit anybody who dives into the event industry. Our industry is completely different than anything out there. You got to have a sense of humor, and you also can't take things lightly. You can't be sensitive. It's so high stress of an environment, because for us on a wedding, we only get one shot at it. Like if I were to play the wrong first dance song, or the wrong song for the bride to walk down the aisle to, I don't get that opportunity back like you would,
Right.
working at a landscaping company and just being able to redo the lawn over and over again. So
Right.
we have to make sure that we nail it first time.
Something that, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like and that's a big difference between us. Like we show up a couple days in advance, 99, 95% of the time. So if there's anything for us to adjust, we can do it in advance. You don't have that leisure of flexibility, which is incredible to think about. I would imagine photographers are probably in the same realm as that. Something you mentioned earlier was that anybody can really get up there and play music, but to get people moving, what are some challenges that you faced, or have you ever been in an event, primarily a wedding, where you feel like you're trying and nobody's really getting into it? Like what do you do to kind of overcome that and kind of guarantee, like, hey, I'm going to make people move?
Yes. So I the best calls are the ones that I receive from a couple, and they're like, "Ah, we're not really partiers. We love music and everything, but we're not really outgoing." And I'm going to give a specific example here. I had a bride and groom reach out to me, And during our initial consultation, they said, listen, we like to have fun. A lot of our guests are around we all just graduated college and so on. So we're all in our mid 20s. But I'm going to be honest that we're just awkward people. And so
Sounds like me. That's what I would say if I called you.
that's why I just hide behind the turntables. You don't want me out there. And so I knew right off the get-go that it was going to be a little bit challenging to get people out there. But to go back on what I talked about before, by setting the mood from the very beginning of opening up that dance floor, dimming those lights, allowing people to not, like, they don't have a spotlight on them. It's not brightly lit up so everybody can see everything that's going on. So dimming those lights and creating that atmosphere for them really helped, one. And then two, to kind of dive in a little bit differently here. During my sales calls, I always tell couples, I say, I don't want you to provide me an entire playlist. Now, if you have a whole playlist, go for it. Send it over to me. And I'm going to try to knock out 90% of that playlist. However, I'm really only looking for that top 10 to 15 songs that are special between you two, that are special between you and your friends, that are the family party songs. Those are the ones that I want to know, because then if I have those, I have the ability then to kind of get some insight as to what you guys like and what's going to get you moving. And I can do my job from there and feel out how everybody is responding and fill in songs that go along well with what you've provided me. And so we're not supposed to judge as human beings, but I tell couples, I judge everybody from every second they walk through the doors. I am judging their interactions. I'm judging how they just hold themselves. I'm judging if somebody is bebopping to a jazz song or one of the cocktail hour or dinner songs. I'm paying attention to all of that, so I can start generating ideas on how I think that rest of the night is going to go. Because sometimes couples will ask, well, how do you know what you're going to play next? Like, do you have like a set playlist that you go off of? And that's not the answer. Every single wedding is different. A lot of times the music is somewhat similar, but every single format of the way I play those songs is completely different. And that's what really sets a professional DJ apart from what Spotify can do. Because Spotify is just going to go off that order of list that you've provided them, or they're just going to shuffle things. And so if I'm jumping from like AC/DC to some like Lil Wayne or something, that's not necessarily going to go over too well. I got to work my way in there. And you also mentioned, like, if something's not going over well. So throughout the night, as I'm playing music, if I see that one song didn't hit as well as the others, I got a bunch of different things to consider. One, was I just hitting them too hard for a little while and they just really needed to sit down and take a breather for a second? Do I need to just chill out and give them a fun song that everybody still knows to give them a small break? Or was that song just not going over well? And so I've had many times where songs didn't go over well. I'm not going to sit here and try to lie to all of your viewers that everything I do is perfect.
Right.
I've had many times, but I adjust right then on the fly. I'm in and out right away. So if that first 30 seconds, I'm noticing people are already clearing out, they're not singing, they're not head bumping, doing whatever, I'm automatically segueing into something else that I know. So I like to have these like savers per se. And those really go off of the music that the couples provide. So I'll throw one of those in there, and it gives me some time then to kind of reset and adjust to how I think I need to move from here.
Wow, that's insane to think about, that you, again, not only control the energy and the environment of how people are moving, but you're telling me if something's not moving in the direction that you think it should, or you're just, observing, you can live mix. I've never been behind a DJ board, so I don't know how it actually works, but you can literally like stop, transition onto the next song to kind of like recover from that mishap of like, maybe that song didn't work too well. Is that what that sounds like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Wow.
One of my photo booth operators, they were kind of like you. She came behind when I was it was right after dinner, and so I had a minute to chat. And so she was like, "Wait a second, do you like actually use all of these buttons on here?" And I was like, "Well, I guess no, but I do use this one, this one, this one, and this one." And I was like, she was like, stopped me and said, "Okay, I guess you do use all these buttons." I said, "Well, I guess, yeah."
Yeah. Yeah.
But it allows me to keep things moving so that party's not a dud.
Right.
The You mentioned in the very beginning how you guys come in and you create the look from the very beginning by setting everything up and setting that standard right away. And then I'm to come in then and like really bring the energy and the fun part of it. And I like how you said that, because the top two things that people take away from a wedding, and I'm talking about the guest aspect of things, they take away if the food was good and how the entertainment was. So
Hmm.
even if the entertainment's not a DJ, it could be a band. If that entertainment sucked, that is something that people are going to remember, and that's what they're going to talk about from your wedding.
Right.
And so you have to nail those two aspects of things, because if your steak's cold too, or there was a
Right.
piece of like raw chicken that you ate, you're also going to be talking about that. So the
Yeah.
catering and the entertainment, whatever the entertainment is, that it really will set your wedding apart for people to remember, good or bad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. Next question that I want to move towards, because I'm trying to make a list here. I want to talk about some audience, potential client, questions that can help them. And then I definitely do want to talk about the vendor space as well, working with other vendors. Um, on the audience side, if I'm planning an event, and let's just kind of walk me through the process really from the search. Like, you're looking at, different types of DJs. And the first question that comes to mind for me in your process is, would you ever turn somebody away if it wasn't something that you could deliver? Or do you have like a special, like, are you like a hip hop specialist or a country music specialist? Like, or is it, hey, I can pretty much mix anything?
No, that's a really great question, and I don't get asked that one a lot, and that should be like one of the first questions people ask. So I even tell all of my couples this: I am not a sales guy, and a lot of times that comes back to bite me in the butt, but it also helps me out. I literally just want to spin records and make people's days unforgettable, and
Right.
so I am the first one to tell somebody if something's not either going to work or if we're just not a great fit. There's three of us DJs total, and so there's two other guys that work alongside of me. And if I normally take the first inquiry that comes in. And so if I'm already booked, I am leaning on Brent or Mark at that point then. And so I will do the consultation just because I do the sales aspect of things and I answer all the questions. But then I won't let that couple book us and put pen to paper until they've actually spoken with their DJ, because they might hit it off with me. And my other two guys, I have full confidence in them that they're going to do the same job as me, if not better. But if like something just doesn't click right as far as personality wise goes, the last thing I ever want is for that couple to regret that they booked our company because they got this DJ and not me. And so that's
Mm.
why it's very important for the couples to speak with their actual DJ, because there's a lot of other companies out there that are multi-operational, kind of like ourselves. We're more on the smaller scale of things, but there's some companies that have 15 DJs out there, and they'll sign pen to paper with that company, and they'll have no idea who their actual DJ is until about 1 to 2 months prior to the event, and at that point they're stuck.
Wow.
So we will, and if it works out, if they get back to me after, like, let's use Brent for example, they have a consultation with Brent, everything goes well, just something wasn't clicking for some reason. Um, I always ask if it was a great fit, and if they say no, I don't want them to book. I want
Yeah.
them to be matched with somebody that is going to deliver what they're looking for, because it has to work for them. Because then if they just booked with us just to book with us, it also puts us at a disadvantage then, because we're going into that day already knowing like, wow, we got to already overcome this hurdle. And that's a lot of pressure in and of itself. And
I
so
was
it's
gonna
just,
say, yeah, it's almost like it doesn't do you a benefit or a favor, because if you're booking just a book and then you have your wedding, which again, like you said, you can't take back, it's just leading everybody up to for disappointment. So yeah, it's important to address that up front. What would you say is the biggest, not the biggest, but most common mistake when, like, again, I'm married, and we had I guess you could say a friend. He kind of did DJing on the side. That was our DJ in 2019. He did a fantastic job. We were happy with every aspect of it. But that's really my only, like, I guess you could say, other than being at weddings and seeing other DJs, but like, you're not really like watching what they're doing, and you don't have an opinion of whether they're a good DJ or a bad DJ, other than, like you said, how, as a guest, how you feel. But like, I don't know if, like, what skills they're using or what mixing they're using. So essentially we're just going off of emotion, on whether you're having a good time or a bad time. But that being said, what are some mistakes that you could say that you see most common when people are picking out a DJ?
Oh man. So it's back to that connection. If you are booking a DJ just because everybody else says that they're great, but somehow you just don't have a connection with them, it's most likely you're going to find any reason for something to complain about something. And so that in and of itself is a huge issue that people run into. The other one is my budget friendly people. So I always tell people straight up that we are not the cheapest company out there, but we're also not the most expensive. I don't want to break anybody's bank over a wedding. That's not how a couple should start their lives together. But I do have to make sure that we charge an amount that kind of represents the service that we're going to deliver. And there, a lot of times people are looking, I call them the $500 DJs. So
the $500,
the $500 DJs. So I'll get a couple in initially right off the bat. Once they fill out our inquiry form on the website, it gets submitted over to me, and I always follow up with a welcome email then at that point, addressing any questions that they might have had in that inquiry. And then I always attach our pricing brochure immediately, because if we're out of somebody's price range, like I said, I don't want to sit here and waste anybody's time over something that, like, it's already not going to be a great fit. And I don't want to break your bank. And so there's a bunch of other companies out there that are still great for a lower price, but I'll get these couples, they get my pricing brochure and they'll still book the consultation with me. And they're like, well, we don't need this. We don't need that. We don't need this. So, like, what can we do as far as the discount goes or reducing the price? Because this is all we need. I said, nothing. I mean, my price is my price. You can remove all of that, but it's still not the bread and the butter of my knowledge and expertise that I bring to the table. And so there's nothing I can do for you. And so they go out then and they find somebody within their budget of maybe $500, and they're pissed because the DJ had old equipment. He couldn't get something working correctly. He wasn't on time with things. He played the wrong song. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that some of these $500 DJs out there are still great, and they're great people. I know that they're great people, but I promise you, if you're going to spend what you want to spend, you're going to get what you get out of it as well. So don't try to nickel and dime something that is so important to your day.
Right. Yeah, we have a quote or a motto. I learned it a long time ago in our business, that it's called buy. Now I'm losing my train of thought. Buy nice or buy twice, essentially, is our motto. That you could buy. It's very similar. There's tents. There's literally like PVC, like canopy tents that people call tents, but they're not tents. Like, we have commercial grade tents. They're thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We recently got clear top last year. And we have a bunch of different styles to pick from, and they're very expensive commercial grade tents. And there's a big difference in the market. So then I would assume that there's a very similar comparison in the DJ space too, where it's like, you just might not have that oomph behind the event because the person either just got started. And don't get me wrong, everyone has to start at some point, but I would imagine you bring a different, unique And I can already tell just by talking with you here, like the passion that you share, you can't really like put a price tag on that. You know what I mean? Like that's not like we can rent a tent and we buy from the same manufacturers as this other tent rental company. At the end of the day, as long as it's installed properly and et cetera, one might take a little longer than the other, but essentially you're getting that product. But the service behind it, we use a lot of innovation and technology within our planning process. That's really what goes along with it too. So the way you're saying the DJ planning process, that is a part of the whole experience, you know, and for us, we call it the rental experience. And for you, it's probably the DJ, you know, experience. You know, so that's a big separator that I mean, I go back to being a customer and looking for a DJ. We kind of, it's hard because we didn't really like open up the market and say, you know, send us all your recommendations for DJs. We kind of already knew like who we were going to use. So it's a little bit different. I'm just trying to put myself in the, you know, customer's position of they don't know. They're not educated to the point of like, unless it's sort of second or third, you know, wedding or whatever, like they don't know who to pick. So it's really interesting to hear what your process is versus, you know, quote unquote, I like that, the $500, you know, DJ, because I do feel like our industry, events industry as a whole, in all other categories, like I'm sure you could get a cheap planner. I'm sure you could get a cheap photographer and it's, you know, not as nice of equipment or they miss the shots or whatever. But like we talked about earlier, you don't have a second chance, which is ultimately what it all comes down to for that event day.
Yeah, I mean, let's even make it a little bit more simple. You can get the Big Mac from McDonald's, or you could go get a burger from Longhorn Steakhouse or Morton's or something like that. They're both burgers, except one is a lot tastier and a lot better than the Big Mac is. They're still both they're great and they're tasty, but it's just one offers a little bit more quality.
Right. Now, how have you upgraded? I wrote down technology as one of the talking points. When it comes to equipment, like I could look at a tent and tell you, maybe not the specific manufacturer, but I can tell you kind of, you know, what size it is within a group of what manufacturer it is, just on the design factor. You know, you could have a 40 by 60 tent and it could be from 4 different manufacturers. And just by looking, you can kind of tell by the trim, you could tell by the pitch, you could tell by a couple different factors. When it comes to the equipment side of things with planning an event, how much has your equipment grown through the years? Or did you start off with the same system that you're using today? And then B, thinking forward, what is changing in the DJ space as technology does continue to boom?
That's a great question too. So the entire 10 years that I was with the first company that I was with, I used the same equipment. And I still use that equipment from time to time, depending on the circumstances, because I've maintained it very, very well. It's not beat up. It's not antique looking. It's still well maintained, but I know that we deliver a great service, and it's talked about throughout multiple different vendors within the industry. And it also is shown through our reviews, but I wanted to still be something different. So when somebody sees us at a wedding, they're like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. This guy knows what he's doing. And so for us, it was really like in my background here, it's adding those tube lights. It's getting column array speakers versus the big bulky speakers that you put on a tripod. They're more sleek, modern, and elegant looking. Now, obviously, there are certain times where column array speakers won't work, and I'm not trying to get technical here. And so for all you other DJs that are listening to this, please don't fault me for this. But the column array speakers for the majority of the size of weddings that we do in and around this area, we're not really seeing, unless you're in like the heart of DC or something, you're not really seeing weddings where there's more than 250 to 300 people. And so the majority of what I do is in the Frederick County area. And so our weddings are typically 150 to 200 people. And so the column array speakers that I use are perfect for that. And they look great and they sound fantastic as well, because they got a sub that's incorporated to the bottom there. It's a 15-inch sub. So you got a thumb. But then when people walk up to my actual DJ booth, I mentioned earlier, it's like a piece of furniture.
Mm.
It looks very elegant. It's not put up on a 6-foot table with a big bulky DJ controller that you put up on top. It's built into a piece of furniture. So it just adds that extra level of I call it the wow factor, to
Mhm.
people when they see us out doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I
No,
want to deliver as much as I can to my couples.
yeah. Well, for one, you adapt on the spot, which I think is a tremendous skill set that I never even really envisioned. I hate to sound guilty of this, but I do think like when I think of if I'm at an event, it really does come down to the music for me. So like I definitely have a new appreciation of just hearing that like that struck me from the beginning that you can literally change and adapt in between. I'm sitting there thinking without any disrespect, like, your job is to play music and keep people moving. And that's really it. I guess I downplayed really what all goes into it because there's a whole nother side of it, which is the entertainment side. And I guess I've never really been to an event that I could say personally that it didn't go as well. Like I feel like most of the events that I've been to have kind of been upbeat and fun. So I guess I've never really paid enough attention to what could go wrong or those downfalls that could happen at an event. Um, but yeah, that's awesome. And for Frederick, when you mentioned Frederick, we work a lot in that area as well. What is your service area? I mean, if it's primarily Frederick, but like how far would you go really if somebody wanted to book with you?
I've gone all the way down to Florida before. Now, we haven't done that with Burnside Events,
Yeah.
but I have traveled, pretty far, I mean, to do a wedding. I went to college in North Carolina, and so I still have a lot of friends that live down there, and then obviously some have moved into other states as well. And so I've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to, um, go out of state to do their weddings once they have met, their significant other, to be able to do their wedding wherever that was. Like I've done a bunch in North Carolina. I actually had the opportunity, this October. So my wife does hair, so my wife is also in the industry, and so it kind of helps
Nice. Well,
being,
I'll have to get her
in.
on next.
Yeah, yeah, she'd love to.
Yeah.
So one of her clients, her son is getting married at, oh my gosh, at Martha's Vineyard. And so knowing what I do, they reached out to me and they wanted me to come up. My wife was already doing it, so she gets to go. But they wanted me to come up then and DJ it. And I'm sitting there like, this is pretty cool. This is something I'll be able to remember forever. And I couldn't make it work. I
Mm,
already had a wedding on that day. And if it was just down to that wedding, I probably could have figured out a way to still make it work, where I could get it covered. But I also had 2 other weddings that weekend. And
mm.
so I was already kicking myself for even considering speaking with that couple to see if one of our other guys, would do justice to be able to do their wedding. But I couldn't do that to 3 different ones. And
Yeah.
so, I didn't take the opportunity, even though it was the opportunity of a lifetime, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll go wherever. I try to really focus on the Frederick area. There's a lot of great venues in Frederick,
Mm.
and Frederick is a great community in and of itself. Um, I go down to Baltimore. Obviously, we go down to Leesburg. There's a lot of vineyards out there that we go to. I do try to steer away from DC. I
Mm.
am not a fan of doing weddings in DC. Obviously, if I know somebody, and also if the price is right, if
Right.
somebody's going to pay me what I need to go down to DC, I'm not going to say no. But I really
Right.
don't advertise for that area because it creates way more of a headache for me. And both of my guys agree as well. It creates way more of a headache than it is actually fun and enjoyable. And so we really try to avoid the DC area and just kind of stay within the Frederick, parameters.
Yeah. Would you say there's a big difference with how you have to prepare? Whether it's like for us is an outdoor wedding, under a tent versus being in an inside
Yeah.
venue. Is that like a massive difference, or is it you show up and you're like, oh, no big deal. I just need to do this or that to kind of adapt?
I mean, really, it just adds an extra level of communication. So it kind of it might take an extra like our timeline meeting that we do with couples. It might take an extra 20 minutes to discuss how things are going to flow, or it might actually take another call. But in the grand scheme of it, it's not too much time out of our hand. But there is a significant difference on how we prep for it
Mm.
because I can't show up to an outdoor wedding in someone's backyard. Um, Running on just their family generator. The power is going to it could potentially damage our equipment. And so I got to
Mm.
have those conversations with what type of generator it is, what level of power is it able to put out, what else is going to be used that is plugging into that generator. Do I have a power conditioner that can save my equipment if I have any skepticism whatsoever of how that generator is going to work? So it does add a little bit of more work on our end, but it is. I still love outdoor weddings.
Yeah.
Indoor weddings, I know I'm going to have immediate power. I know it's going to be reliable as well. I don't have to worry about a rain plan or anything. And so I did do a wedding. Sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded here, but I did a wedding, and it's important for your industry, I guess where you guys are as well for your industry. So it was a backyard wedding, and they had rented a huge tent, and they put the tent at the bottom of a hill. So there was only a 10% chance of rain that day. It wasn't even on anybody's radar at that point with 10%.
Mm.
And so they placed, as far as the layout goes, they placed me at the very bottom of the hill in the center of that tent. And so my equipment was underneath the tent, but my body, when I'm actually DJing, I was outside of it. Well, out of nowhere, right in the middle of dinner, right before we do speeches, this massive cloud comes over. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I just didn't even think to prep for something like this because I didn't think it was going to happen.
Right.
And within 5 minutes, it poured.
Mm.
And so I mentioned the location of everything because at the bottom of that hill, that's where all the water ran to.
I was gonna say
And
that's where it's running.
so all of one, I had to adjust to go inside the tent a little bit more so I didn't get wet. But then it didn't stop raining. And so there became a huge mud pile down at the bottom of my table where all of my cables were plugged into. And it fried all my stuff
Wow.
right
Oh
in
my
the middle because
gosh.
we still went with speeches, and everything cut out right in the middle of that speech. And I
Oh
was
my
just like,
gosh.
all right, what do we do now?
Right.
So everybody is drunk as a skunk at this wedding. Um, I'm a little bit angry at this point, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to get everything back up and operational so the rest of the party can go on. So we tried to wait the rain out, didn't happen. So I was able to get everything unplugged. It didn't damage it long term. It fried it all immediately. So
Mhm.
the whole tent was out of power. I was able then to use one of the guests who wasn't drunk was able to help me get everything over to the opposite end of the tent in a timely manner. And I plugged everything back in, and my board was like tripping out. It would go in and out of power. And so my microphone, I went to make an announcement and I got shocked. And I was like, what in the hell is going on? So I said, I got to get this party done. So everything else, as far as the sequence of events goes, kind of just fumbled, and all they wanted to do was party. So I was not going to risk my laptop and my DJ controller for one wedding. But what I
Mhm.
did was I was able to use one speaker, and I had their Spotify list that they had sent me. I already downloaded and everything, and I was able to hook my iPad in to my speaker, and that's how I played the rest of the night.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I have gotten 7 referrals from that wedding.
No
even
way.
though I didn't mix. I wasn't able to do anything to the level that I want to do. But the fact that I made it work and I was able to handle all of that stress um, in a professional way and make things
Mhm.
work and still happen, that's what that's what those other couples that have ended up booking me, that's what they took away from it. And so there's always a way to get it done. Now, I have prepared tremendously to help correct that. So I mean, we bought all these external batteries to power our stuff. We have all of these conversations now about tents, where we're going to be placed, where we're going to be set up, what happens if it rains. We take all that into consideration now before we do any kind of backyard wedding. After that event.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. So midway through that story, I'm literally thinking I'm literally waiting on the final result, because I'm thinking there's no way out of that. If you're down on the bottom of the hill, water's flushing, flooding down that area, like how do you even come out of that? But
Oh man,
that's
I was pissed.
I can't even imagine. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you were even, like I said, I didn't even think there was an outcome there that is any part of desirable. And I think that you were even, because I'm sitting there thinking, if I was in that position, imagine what may have happened if you, I don't want to say said, hey, sorry, I can't help you here. My stuff's ruined. But like the fact that you even tried and tried and tried to make something work really shows A, true colors in the company for one, and B, or two, is really just your expertise of the difference between the $500 DJ and somebody that can really, like, they might have been screwed if it was anybody else,
Yeah.
or somebody that didn't have that caliber, which really people don't put into the price tag. They don't understand, God forbid if anything happened here, I've got your back. Like you're going to have something here. So that's incredible. Not incredible that it happened, but I'm sure for your sake, we look back at our failures, or I should say mistakes or mishaps, and overcome them. So I want to finish and wrap up here with kind of switching over to maybe a vendor side, and then we'll wrap it up. With us, we deal with a lot of I have a new appreciation for our own industry, that a lot of our work happens in advance. The only real on-site that we need to guarantee and make sure would be like fall weddings and early spring wedding, or not even weddings, sorry, events, is the heat. Like we rent tent heaters, we rent lighting, we do anything power related is a big concern of ours. And we want to make sure is good to go in advance. But then the other thing really is just weather based, like wind. Rain's not usually an issue unless it's like absolutely downpouring. You might get like puddles in the tents or whatever. But wind is a big factor for us, making sure that we're protected from wind. But other than that, like I'm very, I guess you could say, a newfound appreciation, a refreshed appreciation that all of our stuff has happened in advance. But we still deal with a lot of vendors. When you're dealing with vendors, I would imagine it's a little bit of both. You've got a lot of prep, but then you also have it on site. Not to throw shade to any industry, because beyond the event, we're going to have a lot of people on the podcast that coming from different angles, but there's no doubt about it that we all have to kind of work together. Who, from a DJ perspective, is one of the more challenging vendors that really could either make or break your evening? Is it the planners? Is it the caterers? Because I know if catering, I'm imagining if catering's behind, it throws off your schedule of when you're supposed to be, doing certain dances. What's the biggest challenge with an event?
I want to start by anybody listening to this podcast or any future listeners. I am not, kind of like Jet said, I am not I'm not shaming anybody. I'm not throwing shade at anybody here. But one of the difficulties that I've had the most with, and I wouldn't even call it an extreme difficulty. It doesn't really throw off anything other than it just kind of grinds my gears a little bit. It The caterer will ask me during a buffet to dismiss the tables. And granted, it is something super simple, but my job is not to dismiss the tables to the buffet that you've set. I am doing other things. I should be focusing on playing the music and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that all of my stuff is working, instead of loudly going over the microphone, dismissing tables. One, that's an interruption, so I won't even do it that way. Um, I would walk around personally and dismiss tables, and so that's taking time away from what I should be focusing on and doing. to go around and dismiss tables. There should be somebody designated from the catering team or the venue team. Hell, if you have a coordinator, that's what the coordinator most likely should be doing,
Mm.
to dismiss the guest to the buffet. That is kind of like that is my pet peeve
Mhm.
at weddings. Other than that, I can't really complain. I did have a catering company one time back things up by 45 minutes because there was a huge mishap in the kitchen.
Mm.
It wasn't their fault, but they had to take the brunt of everything because the food
Mhm.
was late getting out. And even though everything was 45 minutes late, us vendors had to all come together to figure out a solution. And I will back that catering company up to the T, because what they did, they could have just swiped it under the rug and just blamed something else or somebody else, but they didn't. They owned what happened, even though it wasn't their fault. They owned it, and they went another step by including all of us vendors in coming up with a solution on how the rest of the night was going to go. And so that included me, it included the coordinator, and it included the photographer. So we all came up, all right, so how are we going to save time here, because we're 45 minutes behind. And so it allowed me to then pull the timeline out on what I had coming next to say, okay, we can either nix this or we can move everything up this way, do this. And we saved everything. So it ended up only being backed up by 15 minutes at that point,
Wow.
by
Wow.
all coming together. And we had to have a conversation with the bride and groom. Obviously, I don't like to interrupt them as much as I have to, but for that instance, we had to include them on our solution plan here to see if they were okay with it. They respected what we did, and it went off perfectly. Then no one got upset. There was no bad reviews left. Everybody had a great time, but that was all because the caterer decided to own what happened, and didn't try to come up with a solution on their own, knowing that it possibly couldn't work. Everybody got involved and had to put their heads together to make it work. And
Wow.
so I know I'm long-winded here, but your vendor team on the day of is crucial to the success and the outcome of your wedding. I
Mhm.
talk about it all the time with vendors, with venues, with couples, that you're looking to include a team that can work together. If you have a team that is selfish and all they're trying to do is just accomplish what their goal is and solely that, um, it's going to show on your wedding day, which is why if I have to dismiss tables, I'm going to dismiss tables. I don't like it.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because somebody's got to do it and it's got to get done. You got to have a team that all comes together, because even though we're all individuals, we're all individual companies. On the day of your wedding, we are one team trying to make sure
Right.
that you have a wedding day or an event day that is unforgettable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's kudos to you. Kudos to all the photographers, caterers,
Yeah.
planners, and coordinators, and everybody that day of stuff. It's a whole different ball game. I mean, we book weddings constantly, events constantly. Like each and every day is different. Like, and especially being seasonal as we book it. Whether it's peak season is what we call it, and off season, there's a big difference. But like right now, people are booking with us. They're booking with you. But we have just so much preparation time to really iron out a lot of these things. I'm learning so much, connecting with the vendors that we're connecting to through this podcast, and just hearing a whole different side of the event space. So I really appreciate you sharing everything today. You've taught me a ton, so I know for a fact our listeners here are going to take a lot away from this, especially both sides. Being able to connect with you, and adding you to a vendor arsenal of people you can work with, hopefully, and get connected with. And then same thing with any potential clients, being able to work with you. Speaking of that, where would you say you want? I always like to end with, just some last messages and just sending people off. Where, if they do want to get connected with you, where's the best place to connect?
You can go to our website. It's www.burnsideevents.com. There's obviously check out the site to make sure that we're the right fit for you. But if you want to head over then to our connection page, fill out that inquiry form. It'll get sent directly over to me, and I have a 24-hour policy that you will be answered right away within 24 hours, and it won't just be sitting there. So that's the best way. Check out our Instagram. It gives you some insight as to what we do and the way that we hold ourselves and present ourselves at an event, because they're all it's all videos and pictures from live events that we've done in the past. That is at Burnside_events. Give that a follow and check that out as well.
I appreciate it, Cory. Burnside Events. Go follow them on Instagram. I'll link everything down below as well for convenience. And yeah, I appreciate you chatting today and having you on. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you too, my friend. Thank you, Jet.